Okay, great. Call the meeting to order at 6:32. Just reading our disclaimer for recorded meeting. The meeting will be recorded and may air live. All attendees are muted upon entry. The host will unmute guests during the presentation, hearing, or citizens' comment agenda items. Questions during the meeting can be submitted to the chat area to be addressed by the chair. Attendees not adhering to the guidelines may be put on hold or removed by the host. So that being said, we'll move on to the agenda. Okay, I think I left something out here. We're kind of doing playing with different formats of the agenda. I think originally we had comments here, but I think I must have taken them out by accident. So we'll skip over that this time. Approval of the minutes from April 28th.
Motion to approve. Carlton.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second. Steve Rogan.
Okay, great. Any discussion?
I have none.
Okay, any others? Okay, hearing none. Do a roll call vote, Josh?
Gina,
Yes.
Carlton,
Yes.
Jean,
Yes.
Harry,
Yes.
Joan,
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, the next thing, moving on is review of the financial reports. Josh had sent those out the other day too. We're in good shape. The sheets have been updated, the expense budget to actual. It's the one that has like two things on one page. It actually includes the church and the pickleball courts. So that looks good. Mcallen redevelopment is spelled out too. I think before it was lumped in just like a miscellaneous category. Didn't say miscellaneous, it actually had a title that what the title was escapes me, but it's actually spelled out now, so we can see it a lot clearer. So that's good. It looks like, as I said, it looks like we're in good shape. Looks like we got this year so far 87,458 from the state, so that's good. And we're looking at, I think it's in the fall, Carlton, that we get more. Hopefully get more.
Yeah, this is based on FY21 and FY22 is when I believe the next official draws come.
That's right. I'm sorry. This is FY21. My mistake.
Yeah, for another 5 weeks.
Yep.
So just a quick question. I just noticed this. I can't find it. Oh, the administrative expenses other. That's just a placeholder, is that correct?
No, I think we actually have that money in there, and that was going to be one of my questions too. That what it is, because I know we've spent. I think we paid Josh out of part-time wages. Administrative, I'm just going down in order. Administrative expenses, I think, is where we paid Jen.
Right, so that's now closed.
Right. Dues, we actually have a balance left. I'm not sure. I have to look into that, but we should have taken the advertising for the public hearing out of that.
Well, not only that, but I believe the administrative offense dues, I think that refers to the support that we give to the coalition. And that, so it's had 85, I got to find it. it said 2,875, and that was what we agreed to pay the coalition. So I think that's just covering the coalition.
Right,
Oh.
but then they said administrative expenses other.
Yeah, I don't know what that.
Yeah, because it shows that we haven't paid anything,
Right.
but we
haven't-
should have paid at least the advertising. We don't have a lot of other expenses this year out of that.
Well, that's a good point. I guess we'll have to ask the finance director.
Okay, I'll write to him.
And the other thing I noticed is that we haven't, I don't see if it's encumbered, but in terms of expenses, we were also covering the cost of the deed restriction, I believe.
Oh,
and I don't
that's
see
right.
that specifically.
Okay,
And we're
Good point.
gonna take that out of the administrative expenses?
yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's good. It wouldn't. I don't think it would need to be encumbered separately because we said it was just coming out of the administrative expenses other.
But we don't know if it was actually drawn.
Right. But yeah, so we'd have to move a little around because that's not enough to cover the deed restriction. So it would have to come from the balance of administrative expenses at the top where we paid Jen.
Yeah, we'll have, I would move to accept the financial report, but would add to that we need to clarify the expenses that we just talked about. Exactly where is the deed restriction coverage coming from out of the administrative expenses? And also what was the intent of administrative expenses other?
Okay. Okay.
That would
I
be my
think the original intent, or actually, let's finish the motion, then I'll just for the discussion. Do we have a second to Calton's motion?
I'll make a second.
Okay, discussion. I think administrative expenses other is almost like a miscellaneous. If we pay for public hearings, we pay for the advertising for it, any expenses associated with that. If we have to have printing done, anything like that would come out of that other. But I will clarify that with the finance director.
Thank you.
Okay, other discussion? Okay, hearing none, roll call vote, Josh?
Gina,
Yes.
Carlton,
Yes.
Jean,
Yes.
Harry,
Yes.
Joan,
yes,
Steve.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
Okay, great, thank you. Old business status updates, the Central Square Congregational Church deed restriction and grant agreement. I think we had noted at the last meeting that we had received a draft of the deed restriction forwarded onto the town for their comments, which we did just get back a few days ago. Just comments from the town attorney, Jason Rollins, and the town manager, Michael Dutton. Carlton and I have reviewed them, like their comments, and to see, because some of the questions weren't answered in the same format that Brian Pfeiffer had submitted them. So we went over that. I'm just neatening it up, and I'll send it off to Barbara so she can send it off to Brian. I believe, and last I looked, Barbara wasn't on yet, but Terry, if she's on, maybe Terry or Gordon could answer. I thought Barbara had told me one day when I asked her if the church attorney had looked at it, that they were waiting to get the comments back from the town attorney, so the church attorney could review both at the same time. Do I have that right?
Gina, I am
Oh,
here.
you are here. Oh, hi.
Yes, I think I was renaming my cell phone name.
Oh, okay.
Gordon is on the trustees, and I think we decided that we were going to wait to see what your two changes were going to be made by your attorney. And then we
Okay.
were going to review that with the moderator of the church and the trustees and some people from my committee. And if we are in agreement with the changes and everything, then we were not going to go to the expense of paying the.
Okay, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, and as I said, Carlton and I went over it. So we're in agreement with what the town attorney had recommended. So I'll get that off. Depending what time we get off tonight, I don't anticipate a
Okay.
real long meeting. If I
Okay.
don't send it tonight, I'll send it tomorrow. You guys can, because when,
So you're done with it at your end, and then we're going to review it. And then if we like everything, we'll send it off to Brian Pfeiffer.
right,
Unless it, and I think I'll discuss this with Brian Pfeiffer, because the next step might be to go to the Massachusetts Historic Commission. Does it have to go to town council at all in Bridgewater?
no, not until the
Not at this
final-
stage, not at this
Not
stage.
at this time.
right.
Okay,
It does need to go, but it's like a final approval.
okay,
for the
then I'll
town to
just,
accept it.
yeah, then the first person I'm going to talk to is Brian Pfeiffer.
So
Okay.
just to clarify, not to clarify, but just to say, they didn't provide us a markup to the document that was provided, that the draft that we sent. They answered some questions. So once you guys review the changes, let us know, and we will make the final changes to the grant agreement so that we can send it to you guys as a final document.
Okay,
Okay, the deed restriction, Carlton.
Right. Oh,
Right.
no, the deed restriction, yes. I'm sorry
Yeah.
about that. I've
Yeah.
got the grant agreement in my head. Sorry.
Yeah, you're doing that earlier today too. But no, we got two going at the same time, so.
Thank you for
Um,
clarifying.
Okay, so, yeah, what Carlton said, Bill, we'll get it off to you if everything's okay. We'll just have it. What he said.
so you're sending both to me, aren't you, Gina? Are you sending the grant agreement and?
Not yet.
Not
The
yet,
grant
okay.
agreement is something that you guys will get when it's all set, when the deed restriction is done.
Okay,
The deed restriction, the grant agreement. Jennifer Golson had drafted one up back a while ago and
Mhm.
sent it to the town to be reviewed. So we did just get that yesterday, maybe the day
Oh.
before, but just this week. And that just had a couple minor things, but that's nothing on your end. That's just part
Okay.
of the agreement that we write up, and hopefully you guys agree with it and sign it.
okay,
But that's
right.
a short, just a few page document.
okay. So I'll just be waiting to see the deed restriction coming.
Right,
When it can send it to me.
right. Now, one of
Okay.
the things, and I had closed the document, was that you folks actually pay to have the deed restriction file the deed restriction. It's not the town. I just
Oh.
wanted to clarify that.
Brian would have a suggestion of what that would cost, or do you happen to know what that would, is it a small amount? A
I
large-
don't know. Does anybody else know?
Jennifer would know.
Yeah. I miss Jen.
I don't know what deed restrictions. I know any deed actions have a rider on it of some kind for community preservation. Let's find out and get back to you guys on that.
Okay,
Okay, so this would be the cost
know.
to file it.
Yeah, I
Right.
don't know if it's the cost to file. I don't know if it's $100 or $200 or something north of that. I don't know.
Okay,
right. Brian should know too roughly,
okay, I'll ask Brian.
Right. but we can look into it too.
Okay.
Okay.
thank-
Just the final point is that we're moving forward. We're maybe at a half a snail's pace, but we're moving forward.
It's the right direction.
Yeah.
It's like I say, when I hit the golf ball and it goes about.
Exactly, that's what I'm thinking.
At 10
It's-
feet
it's
in front of
forward.
me, at least it's the right direction. Might take me 5 other hits to get the 100 yards, but it's the right direction. Barbara understands.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, okay,
Okay, so thank you for that. Moving forward.
okay, great.
Great.
Any other comments from the committee or the church folks?
Yeah, well, I just have a little concern that I've thought about myself during this week.
Sure.
The cost of materials now, how
Oh,
they've
yes,
exploded,
it's-
you know? Maybe
Yeah.
we don't go there.
Yeah.
But I've been thinking about it for the past week, so,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really blown out. Well, hopefully by the time the deed restriction and everything is set, maybe they'll start coming down.
yeah, we can
Hopefully.
only pray.
Yep, pray and fingers
Let's do
crossed.
that.
Okay, look up at that steeple and pray.
Okay,
Okay,
Jean.
okay, great, thank you. Next is the policies and procedures document. Callan has been, we had worked on it with Jen Golson and Jennifer Burke. It needed some final edits that Carlton is nicely taken care of. He should have his updates, and then I'm just going to go over because I had some changes too, but as we all know, it's hard for 2 people to be editing a document at the same time and put them together. So he's doing his and I'll review it. And okay, then we'll send it off to the rest of you. So you
I
should
should
have
have my
it.
comments done, I think by tomorrow.
Okay, and I'll look at it, and we'll get it up to the committee in plenty of time just to review. I think we should, yeah, we'll get it out to the committee to review. And if it looks okay, I think we should pass it by Jennifer Burke too.
Jennifer will be gone the month of June for the most part.
Oh,
She's
Mhm.
getting married early June and will be out of the office for about a month. We'll try to get it there, but I think the town manager can also do his final check, and the finance
Right.
director. Anything that was questionable was the finance director's question. So I think we can
Right.
get it through
right, sounds
by
good.
the next meeting.
Okay, good. But I think the CPC should review it first,
Yes.
or the town. The
No, I
CPC,
think the CPC should have members should have a chance to read it and see if there's anything that we, for some reason, misrepresented or misinformed or otherwise.
right. Okay,
So
sounds good.
So
Oh.
basically, when that comes to you, if you want to have any comments on the document, send them to Josh, please, and he will forward them to Gina and I, since we have to do the editing now.
Mhm. Okay, sounds good. Okay, next, the High Street Dam and Bridge mitigation. I know I sent out that huge document and said, do your best reading it. But Carlton's basically, and Steve can jump in too, because I think they're both on the committee, to give an update where that stands.
So where it stands right now is that to go back at the elevator level, the federal government, National Marine Fisheries, submitted a mitigation plan that you received, and I had it sent to you guys simply because I wanted you to understand what was going on. Partly because I wanted to make sure that we understood if there would be any CPA requests, which I will state now, there will not be any of those requests, and I'll give you the reason why at this point in a minute. So we on the ad hoc committee, Steve and I, Eileen Heine, were all sent copies of it, and we've reviewed it, and I know I submitted, and I know Eileen submitted comments, and I'm assuming Steve did. But the major piece of that, when you read the mitigation measures, there are 3 places where it sounded like the proponents we're having the town pay for the mitigation. So I'll just go over the letter that I received yesterday from Michael Dutton that he sent back to the federal government with comments that he's incorporated. And basically those comments go to the fact that we aren't going to pay anything for this mitigation. It wasn't our project to begin with, and we're the recipient of the results of that. And the only thing that he said that has ever been promised was some in-kind services from the town, that kind of things. I like permitting and, you know, engineer review, that kind of stuff. So anyway, what he said is that I'm going to read some things if you don't mind. The draft agreement references that the quote town of Bridgewater and MEM Realty Trust will engage in a 36 CFR 61 qualified architect historian to prepare the Massachusetts state level documentation from the Ironworks Bridge and contributing resources to the Bridgewater Ironworks Historic and Archaeological District, consisting of the town river, fish dam, fish ladder, East River Wall, West River Wall, and all that will be affected by the undertaking, quote unquote. The town recommends that the language be changed to the project will engage, all of those words that I did. So he's changed it to town, from the town of Bridgewater and M&E Reality Trust to the project. So what he's saying is that whoever basically runs this project out of the state or the federal government must pay for any of those documentation, at least at this point. Section 5, interpretive signage, similar to the comment regarding Section 1. The draft agreement references that the quote town and MEM Realty Trust will fund the design, fabrication, and installation of 2 interpretive signs that describe and depict the historic significance of the Ironworks Bridge and the Town River Dam. Again, Mr. Dutton says that the town recommends the language be changed to the project will fund. Again, taking the onus of money off the town's back in this MOA, memorandum of agreement. And the third place that he wrote back is in Section 5, salvage of historic materials. The draft agreement references that, quote, the town will include a provision in the construction bid documents to salvage the steel gears, the shafts atop the granite structure at the west end of the High Street Dam prior to the general demolition of the structure. The town, this is what the town recommends. The town recommends that the language be changed to the town will include a provision in the construction bid documents to salvage all historic mechanisms to the extent practicable. Basically, again, that's saying the town wants to make sure that we're not on the hook to pay for some of these mitigation measures. I noticed one thing. Oh, the other general comment is one that I picked up on. Please confirm that what they call the area of project effect, APE, as shown in attachment A is consistent with the text of this document. Basically, the area, the APE, the area of project effect, in the document it says it goes up all the way in West Bridgewater to Reynolds Landing. But the diagram they included is well south of that and well south of the Comfort Willis Bridge that has historic structures that we've pointed out need to be taken care of. So that's an error on their part. But so that's where it is. And I appreciate the town manager doing that. And Steve, you can chime in here in a second. What I would like to consider, and I would like a discussion at this point, if we could, as to whether or not the Community Preservation Committee should take a vote that we will not support any funding that's part of this project. The reason is again, there's always a chance that somebody's going to come back and say, well, that's historic. You have CPA money. You should fund this. And based on the whole history of the project, it was not initiated by the town. It was basically handed to the town, especially the bridge. And the bridge is coming out as a result of the dam being removed. And the bridge will be replaced. But I just don't see any reason that the town should be pay any money with respect to mitigation. And I'll stop there, and maybe Steve has some comments.
I think that I think the only comment I'd have is
when we were discussing the mitigation measures, we put out the, I put out the offer that the historical commission could work on the, assist with the design and wording of the signage that would go in the, that would go onto the interpretive signage. But we never described it as like we're going to be taking on the responsibility. It was just that we would, because we have the skills and the knowledge of what would go on it, we can assist with the design. But as far as production and installation, like that should be taken care of by the project, not by the town.
Yeah, and I believe it has that language in there, except that it sounded like the town was going to pay for all that.
Yep. Which was never the case.
So,
Okay.
Steve, if I could ask you a quick question.
Sure, go ahead.
What do you think, Steve, that how official does the CPC need to be, in your opinion, regarding any funding from CPC? Do we need to make a statement that goes on the record to the town?
Well, I think so. If I remember correctly, when Jen was speaking last meeting, the CPC, she was mentioning that certain signage couldn't be covered by the CPC.
Mm-hmm.
So if that's the case, like the CP, like any funding from us, which was never offered, would be, we could say that's not even an option of funding for the signage.
So we could make a statement that even though signage has been mentioned, something to the effect, even though signage is mentioned in the minutes, et cetera, that CPC, and we'll have to find the citation, but CPC cannot cover that kind of thing.
Yes.
I'd like to hear from everybody else, Gina, and I'll stop my mouth running.
Okay, I just have a question first. Is that the only thing they're talking about possibly CPC funds for, is the signage? Or are they talking about for other aspects of the project?
Well, I know that Stephen Black, the steward, he had mentioned the fencing, but like that's more, I think Jen was mentioning that was more of a repair than it was a, it doesn't fall under the action items for CPC. Carlton, I know you might know more about that.
Well, it doesn't fit the verbs, create,
Yep.
restore, that kind of thing. If there had been a fence there that we could document, then it might be feasible for CPC. But by and large, that needs to come from other sources. That said, I don't know if the open space committee working on their side of it might suggest that CPC fund a fence, but it's not creating. So again, we'd have to go through an eligibility assessment on that. So I'm not.
Right, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I think if we knew there was a historical fence there to begin with, like the Mount Prospect Cemetery had their historical fence, and that was funded to redo. But to me, looking at it, it looks like just a chain link fence that's in complete disrepair.
Right.
Okay.
That's my thought. Doesn't mean it's CPA gospel, but that would be my thought. And actually, and I hate to say this, I admit to it, I guess I never paid attention to the fence, and I look at that opening all the time until one of my cousins who lives in the neighborhood commented to me about how bad it is. And now it's like, since he mentioned it, that's all I see when I ride by.
Okay, but to clarify, there was a request to have a safety fence put up along the river.
Okay.
Okay, not along the street, but along the river.
Okay, so
it's a
that's not
different
the,
location.
it's not the street fence that you were talking about.
As far as I understand, that it's
I
not
get it,
that.
okay.
But that said, that fence is there, but who knows if it's historic. And I also will mention the plan calls for the proponents to install a canoe launch just south of the new bridge and just north of where the bridge, the dam that's going to be taken out would be located. So that's one of the project things that they indicate. I just don't want them coming back to us and say, well, you've got recreation funds, you could create that canoe launch. I don't want us to be on the hook for that.
Yeah, that was their option for a mitigation of making that the canoe launch. But that is, once again, that goes back to they need to be funding it, even though that in the meetings they've always said like that they don't have money to fund it. So,
but that's something that right now I don't recall seeing any of that type of recreational development included in the mitigation measures. That would help me a lot if in fact that was in the mitigation. So I'll take it. Okay, just I want to make sure that Joan and Jean and Harry have a chance to chime in here.
Okay,
I
don't everybody speak at once.
I really don't have anything to add. I agree with both you, Carlton, and Gina, that the town should probably not be responsible for most of the actions that are taken there. I don't know as much about it as you do, but listening to you and listening to Gina, I believe that I guess I go along with exactly what you say.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
I
Do we have
don't,
Harry or Jean?
I don't
Jean?
really have anything to add.
Okay, thank you. Harry?
Okay, I'm involved in this through the Taunton River watershed and the Stewardship Council. So
Mhm.
there's other ways of taking care of certain problems, but I agree with what Carlton said and what Steve said, that they brought it up, so they should take care of it from there.
Okay, for the canoe launch?
Right, the canoe
Right.
launch, they're the ones that mentioned it, so they should continue with it. And we can
Okay.
push
What
it
about-
further up at my end anyway.
What about the other, Harry, what about the other mitigation measures that they suggested the town pay for? Where are you at with that one?
I didn't go over it, but I believe we gave the town some money from the Stewardship Council.
For what
Okay,
purpose?
Town manager put in for a grant, and we gave Bridgewater and Middleborough grant money the same night.
But was it for this particular project?
Yes, it was for the High Street Dam.
and what was that money from again, Harry? The stewardship?
Taunton River Stewardship Council, we get money from the National Park Service to give out in grants.
Oh, okay. Got it, thank you.
All right. So given that, thank you guys for informing and helping us think this through. I move that the CPC submit a letter to the town manager with respect to the High Street Dam and Bridge Deck project, indicating that the CPC would be hard pressed to agree to any town funding for that project.
Okay, Carlton, can you just, I'm sorry, can you just repeat some of the things that they were suggesting the town possibly pay for?
The first part was the documentation. Basically, it would be architectural historian to prepare Massachusetts level documentation. Basically, what's required is that once they start to take these historic structures apart, they have to have a certified historical architect, photographer come in and photo document the whole thing. And the way that this is written, it sounds like the town will engage. And the will engage means we will engage it. And that's not what we discussed. What we discussed as mitigation was they would take care of that. And they said that that was part of their job. So the language is a little bit funky in the way they said this. And the town manager said basically that the project will pay for it. That's one.
Mm-hmm.
Two is the interpretive signage. Basically, what they said in here is that the town and ME Realty Trust will fund the design, fabrication, and installation of two interpretive signs that describe and depict the historic significance. There is a direct statement that the town would pay for the signage.
Mm-hmm.
Town has indicated they will not pay for it. And the
Okay.
third one is salvage of historic material. And the way it was written, it sounded like we would provide a provision in the bid documents to salvage the gears, et cetera. And basically, the town manager said, to clarify, the town will include a provision in the construction documents. That's just clarifying that the town is not going to pick up the money for that.
Okay.
So that's my motion, and now I've lost all the text that I talked about, but those are the three
I'm
areas
sorry.
that they-
I'm sorry.
No, that's the three areas that they indicated they would be mitigated. There's other language in there that might relate to this, that, you know, but this is the three things that we picked up and when we reviewed that draft MOA that really caught our eye, that we had not agreed to any funding from the town.
Okay.
I had just thought of something. Now, how
Sure.
do we get signage there?
This is historical signage. Steve can probably explain it better, but it's really signage that typically is a small metal plaque that's placed on a rock somewhere indicating that there used to be a historic bridge or historic dam there. I don't know exactly what size these things would be, but I don't want it to be minor, small size, to be honest with you. And I
No,
don't know.
I think that, go ahead.
I would want to see something because a lot of people don't know it's there.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know any of this is around town.
So directional signage is one thing. This is historic attribution signage.
Yeah,
So-
well, if you go there right now, there's that there is a signage that has like the image of the old foundry and the write-up on it that that was actually designed by David Moore.
Yes.
So I think whatever historical signage, like when we gave the when I mentioned that we would help design it, it would be in that vein. It would be because there's an example. They gave an example of what the signage, interpretive signage that is over at the dam removal that is in East Bridgewater, and that is like what Carlton mentioned. It's just a bronze plaque on a stone, and it's very uninspiring. It doesn't. You'd walk by it. This what would be designed would have been or would be interpret kind of be a write up, but more visual. It'd be so there would be some imagery that would let you know what was there rather than just text.
Right. More interpretive signage that respects the history.
Yes.
But, you know, how can we get it so that if people drive by, they say, oh, there's a park there? Because we had, last week, the Osamaquin Club did some planting down there. Well, one of our members is from East Bridgewater. And trying to tell her where it is, which she's probably driven past this place several times.
Yeah.
And it was very difficult, you know, to get her to understand where she was going.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think that I know during the master plan committee meetings. And what's documented inside the master plan is that a townwide wayfinding signage plan should be developed, which would direct people to these places. Says that there'd be a cohesive, like, kind of red thread that brings everyone to each of these parks. And I think that it's something that's something that I think the town needs to would need to take on, that's separate from the from this project.
Mhm.
But I think as far as this project goes, this you can have a standalone interpretive signage for this project, but the town definitely needs to develop a wayfinding to get everyone to those to all of our open space that nobody can find.
Mhm. And I think it's when Calvin was first and said it, we've talked about it in a couple meetings, the signage. I was thinking kind of what I think Jean was thinking is a big sign that says Stanley Ironworks Park that makes it easy to identify.
Yeah.
But this isn't. This is almost like the stone that's on the common, like on the end of the fountain for Mickey Cochran. Just like something like that, only bigger, just a stone with a bronze plaque on it. That's what you're talking about for signage, right?
Right. So there's
No.
wayfinding, there's wayfinding. How do I find it? How do I know it's there? And then there's the signage that respects the history.
Okay.
And what we're considering here is the signage that respects the history.
Okay.
But
Mhm.
I didn't hear, Gina, I didn't hear a second to the motion, so I want to make sure that,
I just want to get your motion again. Josh, did you get the whole motion?
Josh, can you help me?
Yep. So I have Carlton Hunt motion that the CPC submit a letter to the town manager indicating that the CPC would be hard pressed to agree to any town funding for the High Street Dam and Bridge project.
That's what
I
I said.
second
Thank you.
that.
Thank you.
Okay.
I
Josh,
second it.
can you shoot that to me at some point?
Yep.
I think I got it down good, but just so I have it.
I think Josh got it pretty much verbatim what my short-term brain now remembers.
Yeah, I was starting to write it down, but then I went into ask the question and lost
So-
the train of thought for the other.
Sorry, I interrupted.
So to move us forward, Gina, to move us forward, I think we've discussed this very thoroughly, and I would ask that we move to a vote.
Okay, can I just ask a question in the discussion part? Okay, we're saying the town would be hard pressed to pay for these things. But how does that go along with the grant that was received from the Taunton River Stewardship?
I think
Because that
that's
money-
separate. I think that's a separate source of funding that was provided before this time, and that's not town money. It was a grant from somebody
Okay.
to the town. So I
Okay.
don't think there's a conflict there.
Okay,
I'm talking about
Harry, your
CPA
thought?
dollars.
The grant is a matching grant and the town's gonna match what we gave them. And it's for different projects that come along during the bridge removal.
So
okay.
I
So
go
that,
along with what Carlton said. We shouldn't be, the town shouldn't have to pay for that.
okay,
right, if there's a matching fund, I don't know where that money comes from, but I don't know how much, was it a $10,000 grant, 100,000? Ballpark?
I believe it was 40. And it can be in labor and because we do it in the parks and the rivers and you keep track of how many people come and how long they're there and then you charge an hourly rate. So it can be done
Okay.
too.
It's what you're saying, Harry, is it's kind of a database gathering for use of parks.
Right.
Okay.
does it have to be for Stanley Ironworks for this project? Can it be used for any of the parks?
Okay, all the grants we give out go for the Taunton, Wild and Scenic Taunton River and any tributaries.
Okay,
All right, so the Town River is the main tributary with the Matfield, because when the two of them come together, that's the beginning of the Taunton River. So all the tributaries, that even goes all the way back to all the little streams that feed into the tributaries. So it covers a lot of area.
Goes all the way
Okay,
to,
so say something, and I probably have my rivers mixed up, but say something at Titicate or Stiles and Hart that goes to the rivers. Could it be used for something at those sites?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, sounds good.
so I
Okay.
would call the question.
Okay, thank you, Harry, for your answering the question. Yes, Josh, roll call vote,
Gina,
yes.
Carlton,
Yes,
Jean,
Yes,
Harry,
Yes.
Joan,
Yes,
Steve.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved.
thank
Great,
you.
thank you. Before we go on to the next thing, I just want to jump back to the Central Square Congregational Church, and Barbara and Terry, don't get nervous. I just want to jump back. It made me think when Harry was talking about grants. I just want to say that the church, we had requested right at the start that they try to get grants, and they did receive a $10,000 grant from the Daughters of the American Revolution. Is that the right grant people?
Myself. Yeah, that's right, Gina.
Okay, so they
Daughters
did
of
receive a
American
$10,000 grant for the steeple repairs. Okay, just wanted to let you know that
Congratulations, and we will add that into the grant agreement that says that you are expecting whatever money you said you
Yep.
had received.
Okay, thank you. I
right.
think
They've also,
they send 50%, which should be coming any day. And
Oh,
then
good.
when the work is done or in progress, they send the other 50%.
great.
Good work, good work.
Okay, back to in order. I'm sorry, I jumped backwards. CPC consultant replacement. Carlton and I had virtually met with Michael Dutton and Jennifer Burke. And I'm not sure if we said this at the last meeting or not. I think we said we were going to talk with them. If I'm repeating what we already talked about, I apologize. But we're asking, talking about the need for a consultant. Michael was going to check with his counterparts in West Bridgewater and Middleborough, who are two towns that Jen provided the same type of consulting for them as she did for us, to see if they were possibly interested in a joint contract, if what their plans were to replace the consultant. So I wrote to Michael, and I know he's been extremely busy, but I wrote to him and asked him if he's had a chance to talk to them. And I haven't heard back, but in the meantime, yesterday, I got an email from someone who has been in communication with Jen Golson, knowing that she was leaving, the type of consulting that we had with her. He was interested in learning more about it and possibly being interested in picking up what she did. He just left Mass Historical Commission. I should have asked him his help on the any questions we had for the deed restriction at the same time. But he just left there after 30-something years of being there. My concern on it, we'll look further into this person, but he basically has historical background. He doesn't have the open space of the housing, a recreation. So that's a thought, but we're going to pursue that. We're going to see what the other towns have to say. Right now, we should be set because Jen Golson had forwarded on to us all the documents that she had been working on. As I mentioned, Carlton's been typing away and updating things that we will get out to you folks to review. But we just wanted to mention that we are working on a replacement. So those are our options right now. I had spoken to, well, not spoken, I'd written to Stuart Saginaw from the coalition a while back to see if he knew of any others that, you know, consulting people similar to Jen. And he nicely wrote back and said, no, but if we find any, to let him know, because there are people that are looking for that. So that's where we stand right now on that.
Okay.
So as I said, we're pretty well set now, but as more complicated things come up, we definitely need the advice of a consultant who's well versed in all the areas. But okay, next is Hanson's Farm.
I would hope that someone from Open Space would have been on here, but I can brief you based on conversations I've had, if you don't mind.
Nope. Shoot, go.
Open Space met, I'm going to say 3 or 4 weeks ago. The Hansons were there.
Carlton, I'm on.
All
Okay,
right.
good.
Go for it, owner's phone.
Right. Yeah, so I couldn't hear what you were saying. I was trying to find my mute buttons. I'm on my phone, so I don't know what I'm doing here. But so you were just giving an update, Carlton? Is that what you were doing?
I was just going to give
starting.
something that you
Okay.
had. You just need to brief us on what you're doing
Okay.
and what their thinking is.
All right, so after the last meeting of this committee, I went and met with the Hansons 2 days later. Bob and David and their son Brian, who is the one who's going to be taking over the business. And we just talked for about an hour about, you know, what they wanted to do. And I already reported this. I think at the next day we had a open space committee meeting. And so I reported it to my committee as well, that and to Michael Dutton, that basically they are doing this, you know, it's not like we have to talk them into it. They know that they want to do it. Brian is going to take it over. So it's just a question of how long it's going to take, how it will proceed. I also went over so one of the issues that came up, and I've mentioned this to Carlton, is that they are concerned that the open space plan, the 2017 open space plan, does not list all of their properties under the chapter 61 properties. It only lists 2 parcels. One's a 2 point some acres and another one's a 14 acres. And they've got a whole bunch more land than that. And most of the farm is a 50-acre parcel or so. And for some reason, those were not included in the list of chapter properties, the chapter 61 properties in the open space plan. And so they said they had mentioned that to Michael a while ago when they had the first conversation a year ago. Michael didn't remember the conversation, but he did after I contacted Michael, he sent an email to the assessor's office and got me a list of all of the Hansons chapter 61 properties. And I took that out to them 2 evenings ago. I just went out after dinner one night and I caught David feeding the chickens. And we had a conversation over the chickens, and he identified, that those were the properties, but they still have some questions about exactly what they're like. They're not sure about his property, the house that he and Janet live in, what will be done with that. They're also finding out that some of the property lines have been encroached upon over the years as they have the survey done. So there's some question. They have questions about what to do about those sorts of things, what's going to have to be resolved before they move ahead. I am trying to encourage them to talk with Wildlands Trust. I contacted Scott McFadden there after the last CPC meeting, and he's very, very interested in working with them. Wildlands Trust latest newsletter had they featured 3 agricultural properties that they have worked with recently. So they're quite well versed in it. And what I have sent, actually, I sent an email to Scott recently asking him if he'd be willing to come to Bridgewater, even though as yet I don't have a commitment from the Hansons that they want to do that just yet. I mean, I don't want to be pushing them to do something they're not ready to do. You know, it's their project. But I think that Scott would be able to really help identify issues, things that need to be resolved beforehand, things that don't, different ways to approach the project, different types of funding. They are somewhat hesitant about using the state agricultural restriction, agricultural preservation restriction, because they don't pay as well, they said. But as Scott mentioned, they could be a supplemental source of funding, you know, that there are, anyway, that there are various things that need to be looked at. And I think Scott would be a really good person to help them walk through it. They also have some consultant that Bob was aware of in the Worcester area, who has worked with farmers, that he was going to talk to. And I think he was going to give me that person's name, but I haven't seen it yet. So anyway, that's where it stands. I'm waiting to hear from you know, whether Scott would be willing to kind of have just an introductory meeting with them if they would like to do that. And if Scott is willing to do that, then I'll follow up with the Hansons to see what you know, what their preference is, and if and when they would like to do that. The other thing is the question of those properties, the list of assessors properties, the 61. You know, whether that's an issue of concern going forward, if we're trying to move something through the community preservation grant process, for instance, is that going to be a hang up if those properties were not listed in the open space plan? So that's something to consider. I mean, if there's some way to correct that, whether it's a letter from the Open Space Committee or from the Hansons saying, you know, for reasons unknown, those properties weren't listed and should have been. Anyway, that's about where we stand.
Okay, great. Thank you, Eileen. Two things. One's just, I want to make sure I have this right. They were hesitant to use which of the vehicles?
The state, you know, the state has a program where they will fund transfers of agricultural land, the transfers of restrictions, and provided that the property will continue to be farmed. But
Right.
What I heard from Scott McFadden is that a lot of farmers have really not been happy with that program, that whenever they want to make a small change, for instance, you know, like somebody was farming cranberries and they wanted to switch to something else, that they have a lot of bureaucratic hoops to go through, and that the state agency was not responsive. You know, when they wanted to do something,
Right.
they would be,
Okay.
and so that they got a bad name. But Scott said that they did have a meeting in the southeast part of the states, like couple of years ago, and they met with all the farmers. They heard all the gripes and a lot of anger, and he thinks that they've improved a lot and have gotten a lot more responsive, but they may still have kind of a bad reputation. But the other issue is just, he said that the state tends to value farmland as if it's all at Western Mass prices. They don't seem to recognize the higher cost of land in the East. I mean, that seems to me to be something that would be fairly easily rectified, I would think. But at any rate, you know, I'm just occurred to me, well, if the state wouldn't give them the appropriate value, if they could fund part of the transfer cost, and then maybe CPC funds could be used for the balance within the town, you know, and I think that's what Scott was trying to say, that there are ways to put these deals together, you know, so, and I don't know anything about it other than that. And so that's why I think it'd be really good to get an expert in who can help us identify issues as well as help them identify their own personal issues that they need to deal with.
I agree. And the second thing, going back to your question about not all the properties identified as 61A properties, I think my thought, again, it's not CPA, you know, Bible, gospel, is that if CPA funds are used, that it should say it in the open space plan. So is there a way for open space, maybe to send a letter to the town manager or the powers that be to modify that open space plan? Or is that something that is approved by the whole world at some point?
Yeah, and I think that would be a place to start. And I've already contacted Jennifer Burke and asked if it could be amended, if we could make the corrections going forward with the master plan, which somewhat incorporates the open space plan, as I understand it. She said that the master plan is not anticipated to even have the same list of properties, that the chapter 61 properties won't be, within an appendix to the master plan. So, I don't know anything about that either, other than I guess the best maybe we could do is that from the open space committee say, we're in discussions with the Hansons and we want to make sure that their property is properly identified, and here are the ones that were omitted, and for the record, let's get it stated that these others should have been in there. So, and I don't know, I think probably what would be helpful is for me to talk to someone at the assessor's office again too, and find out if they can point in to any reason that they know of why those weren't listed. It seems like we would like to have it'd be good to have an explanation if we want to submit some kind of a letter saying that some correction or amendment is necessary. We ought to perhaps know why it happened.
Excuse me, I can add a little bit to that if you don't mind.
No,
I have reviewed the open space section of the comprehensive master plan that's being written. And they have a map in there that shows all sorts of different ownerships, including farm 61 lands. And I immediately identified that the Hanson's farm was not shown there. The Murray farm was not shown that way. And I began to look at the cards for those properties, census cards. And I think the issue is that, and this has been submitted to the consultants working on the comprehensive master plan. So that's where it's at with me. But what I found is that, for example, the farm, the 50 acres of farm, it's listed as a 50-acre parcel, but its first listing is mixed use / conservation. And I believe that what happened is that whoever did the poll from the cards didn't include the abbreviation that was being used for conservation. And since mixed use was the first thing that came up, it's been listed as a mixed use parcel, all 50 acres. So I identified that, and I suspect that that's the same for a number of other properties in town. That's point one. I know the source of it, and I think they're working on it. I have a message back from the comprehensive master plan consultant that they will take this under consideration heavily.
Oh, okay, good.
The other element of that is, I don't think the fact that it's not listed in an open space plan has anything to do with what we do going forward. The fact is that it's listed, and that we now have documentation from Michael Dutton that they are listed as 61 properties. And I think that is more than sufficient to take actions to preserve those lands. So I don't think we need to do too much other than put it on record that we've identified this problem. I don't think we need to modify the open space plan until it comes around that it's due. And I also think that just simply documentation to record from the open space minutes, et cetera, and the minutes of this meeting, that in fact those are 61, there are 461 parcels. And there's 61A and something else. And one's forest, one's agriculture, and I can't remember what the other one is. But that's my understanding of where it's at, and that's my opinion. It's not a legal opinion, as I'm not a lawyer, but I've looked at this a lot, and I believe that we can move it forward just because it's listed on the cards.
The one other thing I'd add to that, Carlton, is I think that might be satisfactory within the town's perspective, but I'm wondering if we ended up going through the Department of Ag, whether they might be more picky, because I looked at their application, and it seems like they really want to, you know, where is this identified in your town planning documents of one
Okay.
kind or another? They look for that sort of documentation. I mean, I think we can point to plenty of, like, we can point to the community preservation plan, for instance, that talks about agricultural properties, et cetera. There's not a whole lot of mention of agricultural properties in the open space plan or in the master plan that I can see.
Well-
So I mean, that would be my only concern, is whether
Well-
the State Department.
Okay,
Regardless of what Jennifer Burke says, I think the Open Space Committee can submit a comment, a factual comment on the draft master plan, indicating that they need to include, for future purposes, they need to include specific properties and as 61 properties. And if it's done as an addendum or an attachment, that would be sufficient. But I think we need to push that a little bit more, because if it is required to be on record somewhere beyond the assessor's cards that's in a plan, I think that's the only way we can get it into a plan.
Yeah, one thing I might do is contact somebody at the Department of Agriculture and see, you know, get some thoughts from someone there about how picky they are about that sort of stuff. I mean, if that would even become an issue, but.
So,
okay,
so
great. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Carlton.
I just had one other question. What period that are the Hansons looking at for this thing to come about, if at all? Is it the next year? Is it 2 years?
Yeah,
What-
no,
Okay,
that's
yeah,
part of what I want to pin down with them. And actually, after I left David, I went to go talk to Bob, but he was under a tractor by that point. So
A farmer's life.
I didn't want to disturb him. So
You
I've
fed the
asked-
chickens and you could have fixed the tractor.
right, yeah,
I see
Yeah, but
that.
they didn't get henpicked.
yeah. So
Is
I've
it-
asked Bob to call me, because what I'd like to do is you know, I wanted to tell him that basically we need to get a plan. You know, we don't need to do anything yet that we know of, but we ought to know how long it's going to take to get all this stuff worked out and see where it fits on their timeline. So,
Right, I see that Janet's on. It says Janet's iPad. I'm guessing it's Janet Hanson.
Hi.
Janet, hi,
I
how
don't-
are you?
No.
I'm sorry, I can't contribute at all because I have no idea what the boys' plans are.
Okay.
I just text Bob to see if he can get on, but, you know, this time of year is hard because every precious daylight, into the dark.
I think
So-
it's appropriate for Eileen and you guys to keep talking. This does give me a segue. The next item on the agenda is a joint meeting with the Open Space Committee. And hearing
Okay,
this
can we just jump back to see if any of the other CPC members have anything to add or questions or anything on the Hanson Farm before we jump to the next? Jean's shaking her head no. Steve, Harry, Joan,
I have nothing right now.
okay.
So
Harry?
what I was trying to go to is that I think this joint meeting with the Open Space Committee could be done in June. It could be done as a special meeting, or it could be done during our meeting. And I would say at that meeting, we would invite the Hansons, and it's a facilitation meeting that we would invite the Hansons. I want to say Brian Pfeiffer, that's wrong. Scott McFadden.
Yeah,
To come in and just have a conversation about the next steps and process. So all of us are aware of what's going on. Make sure somebody from the town's executive office is attending that meeting. Whether I don't think it'll be Jennifer, but it could be somebody else. We'll talk about that later in the meeting. But that's my suggestion on that, is if it's amenable to everybody, that to basically kind of dedicate the next meeting to this open space question and the Hansons.
Have to be at the farm. We could get an ice cream and follow the boys around.
Can you?
yep, we could do that. Josh would
I
have
like
to
that
post a
idea.
meeting for there. We
I've got
couldn't
my
walk
cowboy
around
boots.
too far because it has to be the Zoom, so. Right,
Good
good point.
thinking. So what do people think? Are we, can we, in a month, can we get together and maybe get get help open space committee help figure out what all of us might need to do?
And I would suggest, before we set a date and time, that we just ask Janet to check with David and Bob and Brian to.
Yeah, and
see
I
what-
mean, I need to check with my committee too. I mean, I can't
Right.
any
Well,
date time.
let's do it simply. Let's tentatively plan as an agenda item, a major agenda item, that we would have a discussion about open space acquisition vis-a-vis farmland.
And if my suggestion would be, because as Janet said, this time of year is like more than crucial for the farm. If it's not convenient for them for the time of our meeting or the open space meeting, if there's a time that's more convenient to them, and I know they're probably from sun up to beyond sundown busy. But just if maybe Eileen can work something out with the Hansons for a
Yeah, I
time
mean,
that-
I would like to talk to them, talk to Bob a little more. I mean, David suggested I talk to Bob, that he's really kind of taking the lead on it, and also Scott, just to see what they think about a joint meeting. I don't have any objection to it other than I think we could have a good joint meeting to talk about various things, but about this particular issue, I'd like to make sure that we're far enough along in identifying what we need to talk about, so that it's worthwhile. I mean, because I think the further we can move the issue, some of the questions, like I know the Hansons have questions. And so if some of them could be answered before a meeting, well, then they might have a clearer sense, and we might have a clearer sense of, for instance, what the timeline is going to be.
Good point.
So that's the only thing. I just want to make sure we're doing it. If we waited if we waited till July or something, would it be more profitable time spent if we had some preliminary issues worked out? That's my only consideration. But if I
Well-
talk with both Bob and David and Brian even, I mean, if they all, because it might be nice for them all to be on the call, and then see what Scott has to say. And I think Janet just put something in the chat, but I can't see chat on my phone.
Okay, she said yes, but please speak with Bob, but please include David in conversations.
Oh, okay, all right, yep. Yep.
So let's move forward with this way. Let's tentatively say that the next CPC meeting, but it's going to be up to the open space committee to figure out when they're ready to meet jointly. If we don't do it in June, then we'll try to do it in July. I do know farmers oftentimes take a couple of hours off in the afternoon of Saturday. From my experience as a farmer.
Mhm. Is that true, Janet? Yeah,
LOL.
Janet's laughing there.
Yeah, Janet's saying LOL, I saw that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
but I didn't tell them about the 4 o'clock Sunday mornings.
Yeah, 4 o'clock Sunday mornings is kind of out for me. But I could do it if that's the time. I wouldn't be awake, but I'd be there. Any other discussion on Kansas Farm or the joint meeting? Okay, hearing none. The next thing is the FY22 CPC budget change. At the last meeting, at our April meeting, we had voted to send a letter to the finance director and town manager to modify what we had submitted as a recommended budget, which I did. And the town manager wrote back and said that there was no need to increase it. They based their figures on very conservatively in case for some reason the funds from the state don't come in as expected. So they said there's really no need to do that now. However, in December, we have the option to move money around. So at that point, we could put it into more into the individual pots if we want. I call them pots, I think they call them accounts, but, so that's where that stands. It wasn't what we voted for that I requested, that I sent to the town. They recommended not doing it, so nothing was done on it. I don't know if we have to take back that vote, like vote to reconsider it. And I'm
I
not
don't,
sure.
thi- no, to move us forward, there's no reason for us to rescind the vote. We
Okay.
voted it, they rejected it, done. But I would like to move that our November meeting will include on the agenda a review of CPC funds with the intent to reappropriate money if able.
Okay,
I don't want this to be, I don't want this to go unanswered in November.
right, okay,
That's a motion.
okay. A second, anybody?
I'll second it.
Okay, thanks, Jean. Discussion?
Yeah, the only reason is that I'm putting it there is so that we have to record that we want to have a meeting in November. That's the main purpose.
Okay, sounds good. Other discussion? Okay, Josh, can you just note in your thing that Steve has left in your minutes that Steve left the meeting? He had sent me a message that his battery was dying.
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, vote on the motion. Carlton's motion.
Hey, Gina,
Yes,
Carlton,
Yes.
Jean,
Yes,
Harry,
Yes,
Joan.
Yes,
Thank you. The motion was approved.
okay, great, thank you. Other old business, I just have a couple things and then we'll just like quick updates. The last night at the council meeting, there was a presentation on the memorial building, how that's coming along. It sounds like it's coming along great. They did mention they might come back to CPC for more funding for another part of the project, but it seems good. If you didn't see the meeting, it was an interesting presentation, all the changes being made, so you can look at that at some point, the recording. There was also a presentation on the fire station, for a site for the new fire station, which was very informative too. I mentioned the memorial building because it was just an update because we are funding part of that. The fire station, it was a good presentation, but part of the site that seems to be the favorite site also includes the tool part. So they need to look at that. The other thing that was, it wasn't an update last night, but it seems to be moving along well, is the Mcallen School project. And possibly one of you could add exactly what stage it's in, because I'm not sure exactly, but it seems to be moving forward. And I'm bringing that up because that was also CPC money. Has
What-
the purchase and sale been signed on that? Do we know?
I didn't hear it last night and I don't know what the date is, but I know I've seen activity around the building.
Okay, yeah, they didn't talk about it last night. I put the meeting on probably about 10 minutes after it started, so they wouldn't have hit it then. They didn't the rest, but where I was giving updates on the others, I just thought I'd update on that too. The only,
Gina, by the way, the memorial building, the major changes from the plan that was developed 3 years ago was modified through the very hard work of Steve Rogan, David Moore. I was on that committee, and a couple of other counselors sat in on it, but because of that insistence coming out of the historic historical commission, I think we got a product that is not as egregious as the original plan was. The interior, and we have memos to this effect from Michael Dutton, but the interior access to the lower floor will require a modification to bring the stairway that goes down there now to code. It means it's a reversal of the direction of it and a slight dog leg to the right to get into the basement, and also inclusion of a lift from the main floor to the basement for accessibility purposes. And all the bathrooms will be accessible and in the lower floor. That's a major change. And then they added there is a parking space to the back right of the building, and they've added a sidewalk ramp that goes up to the main entrance that we funded for accessibility purposes. They will be adding that access, cleaning up that parking spot, removing the old stairway in the back of the building that's wooden now to re-expose the original stonework there. And basically what wasn't said last night is that the cost for moving from the left-hand entrance, handicap entrance into the back of the building versus the sidewalk ramp on the right side of the building from the parking lot basically are net neutral in terms of cost. They misrepresented the cost of the total project last night. The building itself might be 1.3 million, but after you get all the adders on, the soft costs, it's probably more like 1.7 to 1.8 million.
Mhm. Well, I think they did say that it was, it didn't include all the soft costs.
Right. I'm just telling the committee what the soft
Oh,
costs
okay.
are right now.
Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Gina? What
Yes,
did you say about the fire station?
they talked about there were three possible sites. The presentation was given by the consulting firm. There was the Pleasant Street property,
The Tool Park,
right, which is the Tool Park, Hale Street, the old nail factory, and I can't remember the third one.
the third one was the downtown station.
Oh, okay, keeping the downtown station.
That's what they assessed at that those are the three original assessments. Oh, no, I'm sorry, Crescent Street, the fields over where the.
That's right,
girls'
because I
softball
didn't
field
think
was,
that the
Crescent
town,
Street, I'm
the
sorry.
current one was part of it. Yeah,
What-
so it was Crescent Street, the Pleasant Street and
Crescent Street and Hale.
Hale Street. And the Hale Street property right now is owned by Bridgewater State University. And they would also move their campus police activities over to that building too, if the fire station were put there. So it'd be like a joint thing. They were rated after talks with the fire department personnel and a slew of other people. Their highest rating one was, I think, 94 points, and that was the Pleasant Street, the Tool property. The other two, I think, were in the 70s for points.
I sat in on that meeting, so I can add a bit more.
Okay,
There were 10 categories that they scored in terms of site suitability. And I don't know the categories, but there were 10. So a possible score was 100, 10 points for each. And the consultants and his team scored the Tool property at 94, the Crescent Street property at 74, and the Hale Street property at 71. It got the low score because its access, its width, its dimensions are not suitable for a headquarters station or a large fire station and all the other things they wanted. So right now, maybe Gina, sorry, step into this a little bit. The Fire State Committee has authorized the consultant to develop site plans for the Pleasant Street property. There's at least 2.5, maybe 3 acres of upland there that can easily accommodate a headquarters, and that's what they're going for right now. Whether or not another fire station is built, the suggestion is somewhere on Bedford Street rather than in the downtown. But that's still up in flux as to what that might really look like.
Mhm. Now, Janet just put in the chat that they go with the Tool property. Is that an official thing?
That what they have done is move the project forward to design a headquarters fire station for that property. Whether or not it's finalized there, I don't know, but that's the highest, that's the best location that we could find, they could find in town right now. And the Tool
Right,
property,
as Janet just noted in the chat, and also as they spoke last night, that because it's the Tool property and it was donated to the town as recreation land, that has to be worked out with,
Right.
I believe our town attorney would contact the family.
well,
and talk about that.
It's part of a trust that was donated to the town. So the attorneys have to talk. And if that can't be done, then of course it's off. But then the town owns property that basically sits there.
Yeah, my understanding is that some of those conversations have already taken place, and I think the town had kind of a favorable view. I think Michael Dutton talked about this at the last Open Space Committee meeting, that they're working on that question. You know, they're certainly mindful of it, and they seem to think that it might work out. So
Okay, when you say they, do you mean
the town,
Tool?
yeah, the town is working on it. I mean, they're quite aware of the legal restrictions, and the town attorney is I believe either talking with someone from the family or the family's attorney about, you know, about getting around that in some way and satisfying them.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
And the town council chair who chairs the fire station committee did mention that maybe one of the things they can do is put a playground or some kind of recreational activity out there, to be defined. But that's one of the things that I think that they're trying to do to make this thing likely work. We're a long way from a vote in the town, to be honest.
Right. Okay, good.
Could put an adult recreation park there.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. It'll
I
be
don't
right
wanna
by
go
the
there.
fire station where they have the EMTs.
Does that mean it's an open bar?
No. That would be
No,
nice
no.
too, but
And I'm sure that the rec commission, Parks and Rec Commission will be engaged at some point, especially when it comes to this kind of recreational type activities. So I'm hoping that they'll absolutely bring those guys in also. Gina, you can
Right.
mark the words. I'm going to try to force it.
okay, sounds good. Thank you. The other thing they talked about for the fire station was because with two stations, Station 2 right now was oh, we have Steve back again. Welcome, Steve. So with Station 2, the current Station 2 being down on Plymouth Street, and the new station that's being proposed on Pleasant Street, they were actually thinking of something, it should be more downtown, so they're looking at sites for that too. They thought possibly Bedford Street, but that wasn't someplace on Bedford Street, but that wasn't part of their original charge. They were just charges looking at those three properties, so that's something down the line, but they are looking for someplace closer to have a central location.
They got lots of money.
Yeah,
That's one of the questions that has to be addressed.
yep. Which is true. I mean, Plymouth Street is probably closer to the center of town. The other one's probably a few miles out. My guess, I'm not good at,
Well, they've got a
Guessing.
big development on the south side of town going in, so
What they spoke to is the substation 1, which is east of the tracks, can handle most of that area. But if you had a second substation on the Bedford area, then you've got better backup for that region. And
Yeah.
one of the major scoring things for the Pleasant Street site was the access to the big buildings that are out there, and also that major commercial developments that have gone, industrial developments that have gone on Elm Street. So there's lots
Maybe,
to move it there.
right, good, I'm sorry. Maybe these new developments could find some money for a new fire station. Wishful thinking.
No, I think somebody ought to mention it.
Yep, just a thought.
You're
that-
back.
And one of the things they noted in this presentation, which I was kind of surprised at, is those apartments and new apartments being built for, I don't know, Gene, how many, 300 that are going in, however many are going in down there.
Oh.
The buildings are all made of wood.
What, at
So-
Claremont?
Yep.
Yeah, the Vista and Axis are all both 5 stories of wood.
Wow. Well, that wasn't us.
Yep, no, but no, not you guys, but it also makes them highly flammable too.
Yeah.
The
So
word that he used last night was combustible material.
combustible, that's the word I was trying to think of.
Wow.
Okay,
Anyway, it's getting late.
okay, anything else on those 3 projects? Okay, the only other thing I have for old business is we said we'd get the policies and procedures document out to you. We're also working on the revisions of the application, plus a eligibility form, and plus a review of a document to use as criteria to review applications. So as we get those, we'll send them out to the committee for your reading pleasure. So, okay, anybody else? That's it for my spiels for things. Anybody else have any old business?
You had something on there about the Perkins Street property?
Yep, that's further down. That's new business.
Oh, okay.
We'll get to it. I just want to be wherever Steve is. That looks so like outside somewhere. It's
Yeah, well,
nice.
it's my lovely backyard.
Yep, I was gonna do outside too, but I thought if I'm writing, I'll probably have papers blowing everywhere. But okay, the next committee liaison reports. I can start. I wrote to Charlie Simons and asked him for an update on the pickleball courts. I didn't hear back from him, but his schedule these days isn't as bad as the Hansons being farmers and working the farm, but Charlie is out straight too, between the town recreational facilities and the golf course, and trying to get it in time that he needs to take off before the end of the year. So I didn't hear back from him, but looking at them, the asphalt is late and they have to wait for it to set for so long before they can do the next step. And I see in our budget things that we've already paid almost $22,000 for the pickle courts. And I think that was the paving. So they look like they're coming along. So we can all get ready to go play pickleball. Maybe we need the fire station there for, I'm gonna be out playing pickleball. But, okay, so that's Park and Rec. Anybody, other committees, Harry, Steve, Jean, Carlton? I probably left somebody out here.
I guess for historical commission, we are one thing coming forward on Juneteenth ceremony. I'll be giving I'll be speaking at that event, telling the history of the history of Black history and the history of slavery and how Bridgewater was affected or affected it. I met with there's some of the professors from Bridgewater State, one of them being Emily Fields, and they're applying for a grant to do the history of the Black and Indigenous history of Bridgewater, and they've actually looked into the first cemetery, and there's a few lots where they have that they're focusing on, and it's very interesting, and I'm glad they're doing that history, and just I'll hopefully find out more soon.
Mhm. Okay, good, thank you. And that's June 19th?
Yes, Juneteenth will be on June 19th, and it's going to be at Ironworks Park.
Okay, great. What time?
I believe it's at 3 o'clock. I'll have to confirm that,
I
Okay.
think it's 3 to 6 or something like that.
but
Okay,
it should
good.
be a great event.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. Okay, that's good. How about Harry? Do you have a Concom? Any reports?
Comcom, we didn't have the last meeting. I was running the Taunton River meeting, so
Okay,
our next meeting is tomorrow night. And we'll be moving along on the agenda. We've got one big project down in Vernon Street that we've been working on for a couple of months. So we're gonna see what happens with that tomorrow night.
okay, great, thank you. Okay. I try to jump onto these meetings. I love Zoom. I always seem to forget some of them, so I'll try to get on to PS tomorrow too. Okay, that's good, thank you. Joan?
I have nothing for housing, nothing going on. I do want to tell everybody that the Housing Authority has contracted with Taunton Housing Authority to manage Bridgewater housing because the executive director retired. There were no viable applications for an executive director. So we have gone with Taunton, which is a highly regarded housing authority, to manage the property until we do find someone that's, that's qualified as an executive director. And everything seems to be going very smoothly.
Okay, good, thank you. It's
You're
interesting.
welcome. Yep, you're welcome.
Interesting. Okay, who do we have? Jean?
What? Oh. I can't think of the name of the company, but they came forward to give a presentation about what they'd like to do with the Perkins property down on Broad Street.
Mhm.
We will see where they go with that.
Yeah, that looked nice when
Yeah.
I had seen one of the plans somewhere. It looked nice. I don't know what it's going to do for traffic right by the plaza, but it looked good. Okay, Carlton?
Did they have any, I've done enough tonight. Do they have in the Perkins area, have you heard of anything that they might be trying to come to the CPA for anything?
Trying to do what?
Come to the CPA for funds of any kind?
No,
You heard that?
no,
Okay.
they didn't mention that at all.
I'm just trying to get a tickler list of potential projects.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I know one of the buildings that they were talking about, and Steve happened to bring up that. No, it wasn't that it wasn't that property.
Mcallen.
One of the buildings on the Perkins property is historical. And they have to get permission to.
Yeah, I think there's like. Yeah, there's I think there's two buildings and are designated And the whole site is on the transportation and industrial corridor, as
Mm.
noted.
Hmm, okay,
I have a question, which
Sure.
probably doesn't pertain, but because we're online. Jean, are you you're on the planning board?
Yes.
What, can you give me any insight as to Pratt Town, those two last houses that they've put up that are practically on the sidewalk there? I mean, is that because it's 40B and they were allowed to do that? Because I'm
I guess.
horrified,
I guess so, yeah, it's 40B.
Okay. really.
When I drove down that way, that totally amazed me.
I was shocked, and I'm not even, I mean, I know the town owns a certain amount of property from the middle of the street or whatever, but those houses are right on the sidewalk, and it's horrible.
Yeah,
It's just my comment, I'm sorry, but it's horrible.
I know it.
My
Is it-
opinion, that whole development is horrible. It doesn't for me, it doesn't portray the town of Bridgewater. And just, it's more of a kick in the butt to see those two houses right on the sidewalk,
Mm.
but
That site plan was passed probably 8 or 10 years ago, right
Right.
around the housing boom. And
Right.
then it couldn't get financed. And so a lot of that stuff went through ZBA with probably very little vetting. That's
I'm
my
sure.
opinion.
it's
Is
just,
that near Water Street? Is that there?
yes,
Yes.
right across, near the fire station. It's
Okay,
just,
yeah.
It surrounds the
I-
fire station.
it's horrible, but anyway, I'll let it go.
Okay.
Thank
Good-
you.
Good
Thank you.
question and comment. Did we hit everybody for? I think we did, liaison reports. Okay, new business. There's a new community and economic development assistant director. It's Jasmine and somebody, I can't remember her last name.
Farinacci.
What is it?
Farinacci.
Yeah.
Farinacci
easy
or
for you to say.
Farinacci?
Yep. Okay. Right now, Jennifer Burke is the community, well, we know she's the director. She's our liaison to the town. Many nights that we meet, CBA also meets. So my thought was to, I don't know how often we need to have a liaison here. I think it's good if they know what we're doing. They do get sent the minutes and agendas, but my thought was to ask Michael Dutton if possibly Jasmine could come to our meetings. Thoughts on that from the CPC?
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so I'll ask Michael Dutton that if we can possibly have Jasmine. It wouldn't have to be every meeting, but just now and then to, if Jennifer can't make it, just so to keep them apprised of what we're doing. Okay, possible future projects. Colin can talk about these because it's two that have approached him.
Yeah, that's the Mcallen factory building down on the railroad track on Broad Street. I think the historical commission will have more to say about this, but during one of the meetings, a briefing at the planning board or something, I heard somebody say maybe it was eligible for CPA funds. So I just wanted the committee to be aware that somebody's thinking about that. I think what they're trying to do is laudable, but it could be not the best aesthetic building the way they're thinking about redoing it. To me, they close off all the windows and shore it up a little bit. The fact that it's 10 or 20 years old and it's still carrying weight of significant amounts, I think is an amazing history. But I just wanted to have this on the agenda so people had their ears peeled for if they would possibly come to the CPA. And I know Steve, because it's in that industrial corridor, the historical commission will have some say in terms of any, I want to say extraction, and that's wrong. Demolition. But that's just a project to watch out for.
Okay, good. Steve, do you have anything to add for that?
I guess the only thing that I'm wondering what they would be requesting for CPA funding. Like I know that like what I'm looking at some of their other buildings and what they've done, it's they basically they showed expanding on the train side of the building, but they were very loose on what was going to happen on the Perkins Street side. So I need to find out more about what their plans are for that
Mhm.
project.
And are they looking to put apartments in there or?
It's a storage facility. It's
Oh,
a,
okay.
it would be it's a storage facility that the company is based out of. I think they're based out of Florida,
Florida.
and this would be one of their fewer spots set up in the Northeast.
Okay, good,
Yeah.
thanks. Jane, do you have
My
anything
understa-
to add to that for
No,
planning
I
board?
didn't remember hearing that at all, that they might come to CPC.
I mean, it could have been in some email that somebody put out later. I don't know. I just wanted the committee to be aware of it. But the reason they want to close it up and make it more airtight is A, energy costs, and B, it's better for things that are stored in there. But I think there are better ways to keep the integrity of the outside of the building. But it's not in my purview.
Right.
So I think some of their other buildings, I think if I haven't said it already, like they basically whitewashed the whole building, even the windows and everything, and then has like a red trim right on top. That's kind of the look of their buildings. So I would say, like, even though a lot of people don't think that the Perkins or the factory on Perkins Street is all that attractive, I think that if you just whitewash it, it makes it a little bit less attractive. But we'll see what happens.
Mhm. And plus I'd hate to see it like with no windows. If they could do something to shore up the windows on the inside. Or
Well,
weather protect them, but
they could do what they did at the Academy building, and they're going to do at the Memorial building. Is they can put that they can refurbish the windows and then put storm windows that are permanent on the outside and make it look good. But we have no control over that.
Yeah,
Right.
and what I think the plan would be to make it all like temperature controlled storage, which all the windows would end up like if you'd be looking into just metal, kind of like what the existing self storage space is like that right now.
Okay. I have to pay more attention to the windows on that when I go by that way. Okay, good. Thank you. Moving on, Carlton, the Lions Club, possible.
Oh, right. I was approached by the Lions Club to basically feel out whether or not CPA money could be used to refurbish the trucks that they store the Christmas on the common material. And I had a meeting with Joe Gillis, who's sort of the project lead, and had a coffee with him in a long conversation. I did provide him with our draft eligibility form, and I said, wasn't real encouraging that they could meet the criteria for CPA money. What area are you dealing with, and what verb are you trying to within that area, which are doing create, whatever. So he took it and he said they would talk a bit more about it. And, I said the best, I can't make the decision. The committee has to make a decision as to eligibility. So I kind of expect that we'll see an eligibility form come sometime in the next couple of months, possibly. That just a heads up that something like that might be coming in.
Okay, good. Thank you. Any comments on those two projects? Oh, we already talked about I still call it walk over shoe, but the Mcallen factory building. Okay. Other new business? Nope. Okay, that's good. Public comment? I think we still have a couple of guests here that we haven't chased off yet. Who do we have? See, Kathy, do you or Rich have any comments for tonight?
No, we've been trying to get proper paperwork together to approach your committee. That's where we're at. We went over this afternoon actually and saw that the Wyman's property has encroached even further, and the trees that they planted are encroaching some of the burials that are right beside the old stuff. And you know, we're kind of at that. We're trying to cross our I's and T's to give you the right kind of plan, knowing that you really need a survey plan and all those different things. So that's why we haven't been in touch with you or Carlton or Steve lately.
Okay.
So we definitely need help with water. Like, we're going over there, and we already approached the town, as we mentioned before. The town is willing to waive the 3,000 hookup for the water, so we can put a spigot in, which almost all burial grounds have, even the old ones like we have in Bridgewater. You know, ours is back to the 1700s, and we're having a problem because the people that we were given by the town offices, none of them wanted to be involved with it. And we were told that the police department would charge us $10,000 just to oversee someone coming and hooking up the water. So, you know, we're running into things like that. Yeah,
Yeah. Wow.
So let me ask a quick question. I'm willing to send you the eligibility form that would help you guide some of your thoughts. And the first thing we always ask people to do is let's get a determination as to what the eligibilities are. I'm happy to send that to you, Kathy.
Thank you very much. I actually tried to find it online, but there's some of the links that when we went into your site, they weren't available. They said,
well, this is a new form. This is
It's
a new form that we just developed.
okay,
Yep.
great.
Carlton, just I'll send you my suggestions to change the form. So I'll get that to you, if not tonight, then tomorrow. Then you can send it to her, but I just ask that you hold off till we just go over the form.
But I do want to start practicing the eligibility determination to help people avoid spinning wheels.
Yep. No, I think that's a great idea. Okay.
Kathy, could I ask a question, Gina?
Sure.
Kathy, you mentioned that Wyman is encroaching. I live right up near Jennings Hill on the property. Has anybody reached out to Wyman's to see if they'd be willing to help with water?
He's been working on this for 4 years, and you know, there's just some problems. I didn't mean to mention his name. I try not to do that.
No, that's okay. But I'm wondering if they would be willing. They live right across the street there. If they would be willing to help out with some type of water connection in the interim of hooking up.
Yeah, right across the street though is another couple. We already took them, but it's not the problem. The problem that was explained to us is that it's mostly the problem is for the cost. The people that the town approved, you know, you have to go through a town approved someone to do the water connection to a public property.
Right.
So much because they said the police department charges overtime, and it would take like a day, you know, they'd have to manage traffic and all that while they hooked up, you know, laid some line. It's only would be what, I mean, it's not that much because the actual hookup is across the street at the DeRozier's house.
Okay.
You know, that's where the actual hookup that would go into there. They have no problem.
Right.
They kind of keep an eye on the whole place for us. So, but the other problem we have too is, in the meantime, we need to get the old entrance, which we mentioned, I think to you, Carlton, I'm not sure, and Steve, the old original entrance for Jennings was there by the north end. Right, and you can see where the trees have even grown into the steps there, and the cast iron and all that from the fencing was taken down. So there's only things like that, but we want to clear that and put in about 15 feet, and the DPW is ready to help us with that. And we would find someone else with bigger cherry pickers than they have in the town, because they mentioned Paul has been awesome. He's come out several times and he's willing to do it, but we have to get permission from the town. Like when I talked to them last year, they didn't know who to would be the one giving the permission. So there's things like that that are really holding us up right now. And they're important things because there's trees that have to come down, because this last windstorm we had a month or two ago, there were 20-foot lengths of tree that came down, and by the grace of God, and I mean that, did not hit our oldest stones there, but they were laying around. So Paul brought some people out to cut them up and get them out of there. But we want to take the trees down, even though, you know, because they're dead. They're 300 years old and they're dead. So we want to clear that, and, you know, all those things are where we're at, Gina, Carlton, Steve, others, Joan.
Kathy, I went out after we had talked and I photo documented a lot of that, and I tried to figure out where the lines are. If they're encroaching, maybe you can file a complaint with the town and they can have it surveyed.
Right. Well, we're trying to do things. We actually talked to Tony, is it, in the finance office, because of the historical easement portion of it. And we were told that we should talk to him about that. Maybe he, because he's friends with the, I hate to say it again, but the Wymans, maybe he could talk to them about the tax credit advantages of, you know, giving the town, you know, the easement of the land back, which is actually, as you all know even better than me, historically, when you have not just a building, but what's called a landscape, and the cemeteries are considered historical landscapes, you're supposed to put a 10 to 20 foot easement around it, and it's supposed to be honored even by homeowners next to it. And we're trying to avoid having to go that route. You know what I'm saying? So we've been very delicately dealing with this, but when we went over today again, they're building houses almost up to the fence. When you were out there, we were also out there a week and a half ago, and they've encroached more. And the trees that they've put up are literally, if you saw it, 3 feet from the old barbed wire fence now, because the original fence is gone. And there are burials like within 1 foot of the fence, and the tree posts are going to be going into that quickly.
Okay.
Right. My thought, and someone else might have more info on it or thoughts, but my thought is, especially where it's still being developed for houses and it's so close to the boundary,
right,
that where it's a town-owned cemetery,
right,
that possibly, excuse me, send a letter to the town manager and the town attorney and ask that it be looked into. Don't we have we used to have a fence viewer in town. Is that position still? I think it was Ronnie Adams used to be the fence viewer that would be in charge of, and Ron Adams, for anybody that's newer, was our town clerk for years, but I believe he was also the fence viewer and would go out and check if there was issues with boundaries. So my suggestion is for you folks, for, you know, Kathy and Rich and Paul, to send, not just meet, maybe request a meeting, but also send a letter to the town manager. Maybe copy the town attorney, Jason Rollins, and ask, because any requests that for the town attorney have to go through the town manager, and just state your facts and just say your concern and ask them to look into it sooner rather than later, because the houses are just getting right up to the boundary line.
Right, well, if I could just say this, Judy, thank you very much.
So that's my thought. Anybody else have anything to add on that? Thoughts on?
We approached Mr. Dutton 2 years ago, and it went back and forth for a year about everything when that was even further away than that. And we were told by the Wymans that they would not put anything further than a 30-foot berm away from the fencing, so we would have plenty of room for, bringing in trucks to do everything. But that has since changed, as you saw, Carlton. Mr. Dutton said, and this is the part where Gina maybe you'll understand, Mr. Dutton went back and forth with his, the gentleman that was his assistant. I can't remember his name, I'm sorry. For the last couple of years, there was a gentleman there.
Oh, Michael.
Yes, and they went back and forth with us, and they said they really didn't know anything about historical cemeteries or the laws about it, and told us that it would, after all was said and done, they said that they had found out that the state had put many cemeteries under Parks and Recreation, which they talked to Parks and Recreation as well as other towns, I know. And they said that none of those people in the state, with anyone we talked to, said they knew anything about dealing with any of that. That's not what they're used to. And they couldn't understand why people were just shifting it around. So we went through a lot for 2 years with that whole thing.
Kathy, I would add, if I might.
Yep, go ahead.
I would add and CC the chair of the, you have 3 counselors that represent you, two at large and 1 district. I think it's District 6, but I would copy them on the letter to see if you can get some movement.
Yes, because today when we went out and yesterday, we were really surprised at the damage to the what's little of the rusted rotted fence on that side, and that's why we also want to get the new place cleared out as soon as possible. Paul said, the sooner the better, he can work with whoever else we get with the larger ones while we're waiting for that to happen. Thank you for asking.
Yep, and one of the things too, Kathy, as an outcome of our public hearing in March, concerns with, like, people's concerns for the town. I was surprised, and I've told the town manager a couple of times, that I was surprised the interest in cemeteries in town, the upkeep of them. And I have mentioned to him a couple of times on both talking to him for CPC things and also talking to him as on the Park and Rec meeting with him a couple weeks ago, that I'd really like to have the cemeteries looked into and taken care of, especially, well, I guess all the town-owned ones are old, but it's a part of history. So it's something he is aware of. We did tell him, we gave him a recap of the public hearing. Plus, as I said, I've mentioned it to him a couple times in meetings that, something needs to be done. So hopefully that will, when you send your letter, it'll jog a brain in there. So hopefully, and if there's anything we can do, we as not CPC, but we as in with my other hat, Parks and Rec, can do something to help it along. Be sure to let me know.
We were told the next step is actually contacting the Mass Society for it, the Historical Society for Protection and Preservation of Historic Landscapes. But we kind of don't want to do that until after we've worked with all of you, and get your advice, because you've been doing it for years. We've only been doing it for under 5. So not just there, but we've also been educating ourselves in a lot of things, regarding historical cemeteries.
Okay, there's a lot of feedback, so I missed the beginning that you said of that.
What did I say? that short-term memory after 50 years old.
Okay, it was something up to, something about the landscape.
You mean the buffer for the easements?
It could be. It was something that's just part of the comment that you just made, but there's a lot of
Okay.
feedback, so I didn't quite get it.
Okay, I was telling you that we were advised that because we've done all this studying about historic easements and for historic buildings and landscapes, it's called, a cemetery falls under the jurisdiction of historic landscape.
Okay,
And the whole thing with that is the state and then the federal government can take over, but we're trying not to involve anyone beyond the people locally in each place.
Mhm.
You know?
okay,
So that's why we want to work with all of you first, because as you well know, the town owns it, but we took over as a nonprofit to help things to happen. And also what we do is we train other people. We got the training. We train other people how to start taking care of other cemeteries in their area. And they cannot do it though, we feel, without that training. So we're willing to train them to get it started. We've already started that in different places, you know, including even in Easton and other places. Stoughton, they want us to help train people at one of their cemeteries that are back to the early 1800s, I think. But
Kathy, do you know Chip Mangio?
yes, I do.
Do you know Chip Mangio?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Talk with him.
Yes,
He
we
does
have.
a lot of work.
He
He
has done a lot of
some
work.
ideas.
He got a lot of grants, but he's now kind of stepping down a bit because he's, you know, he did over 20 years, I believe, right, of work.
That's right. But my only point is that maybe he has some ideas to help you try to move this forward.
Thank you.
okay, great.
I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I do have one more question.
Sure,
And this is really probably a stupid question, but
no such
if
thing.
if there's supposed to be a buffer between the cemetery and whatever Wyman is doing, Wyman must have plot plans up there. Why is Wyman allowed to build so close to that cemetery? Does anybody know the answer to that?
Planning
You'd have
board,
to-
Jean?
You'd have to
Is-
look at the ordinance. You'd have to look at the ordinance that enabled his developments.
Chris Featherpats, you mean, Mr. Dunn?
Okay, so, but doesn't he only own so much land is what I'm saying is, in other words, if I wanted to put a garage on and I decided I wanted it to be 2 feet from the neighbor's property, I couldn't do that. Do you
Correct.
follow what I'm saying, Carlton?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I understand completely, but who knows what, way back when that site was put into the ordinances, that type of development was put in the ordinance, who knows what they put in there? I haven't read it in 15 years.
So possibly Kathy should maybe go to the is it the planning board, or who would she go to find out exactly what the ordinance stated?
Building department?
Yep, community,
Yeah.
CED, Community Economic Development Department.
Okay,
Yeah, that's the start. It's the zoning board of appeals.
well, I haven't had good luck with them, but I mean, I think that,
We're being
I-
quiet here, Joan, because we've had a couple things happen with people from before that don't want to go forward. They don't want to accept the apple cart from our neighbors, let's put it that way. And our neighbors being that one person you mentioned.
well, I do understand their neighbors, and don't get me wrong, I don't want, I'm not a proponent of controversy, but you're talking about a historical cemetery, which I believe should be protected. And if somebody is doing something, and they may not be doing anything against what they, like Carlton said, whatever the ordinance said, but I think that's something that should be checked into immediately
Yeah.
to see exactly what he's doing up there. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
No, Joan, you're absolutely right. Excuse me for putting in Gina and Carlton and the rest of the team, but he is right in that, and I'm sure you all know that better than us. She's very right, but it gets into community politics and things like that.
Exactly,
You know,
yeah.
we're trying to avoid all that. We want to help save Bridgewater's early. I mean, we have Justin Jennings alone, Hayward's, Leonard's. I mean, so many people, Mitchell's, way back to the 60 people born in the 1600s, then passing in the 1700s. We have 70 veterans or more out of 200 and something that we know of. Many, you know, and that's just a beginning. That's one out of, how many do any of you know cemeteries Bridgewater owns as
Right.
considered town-owned?
13,
Quite a few.
13. I just plotted them all on Google Earth.
Okay. Yeah,
And they're all listed in the comprehensive master plan. That's where I got the list.
that's awesome.
Mhm. Yep, and as Harry suggested, the zoning board of appeals.
Okay.
My suggestion again is, Kathy, I would act on it. I would act on it without, put aside the fact that you're trying to be a good neighbor. I would act on it because once the buildings are up and then you try to take something down. I just went through this with the town. You try to get something taken down or moved, it falls on you legally, and it's a big burden financially to get something like that done.
I know.
So to me, I would put how do they say that? I would put the cart before the horse and work on that first. That's my opinion.
Yep,
Thank you. And anyone
I agree.
that wants to give us advice, we would love to have it offline.
I'm sorry, it's a lot of feedback. I don't know if you have a radio or a TV on. I can't hear
get
you.
closer to the microphone.
Yeah. But that, again, just my opinion.
Yeah,
Mm.
good thought.
If anyone
Very
would-
good thought.
You have Carlton or Gina or Steve, our emails, so they could email us, and if there's anyone that wants to give us other advice, we're open to anything.
Okay, if you want to put your email in the chat,
Yeah, all right, I think I found it here. Okay.
okay, I'm on my iPad, so it's at the top right-hand corner, but I think if you're on a computer, it's at the bottom.
I think everyone should see it. Oh, for some reason it said to Joshua McGraw privately. I don't know why.
That's okay, because it'll go to Josh. He's our admin.
Okay. All right, that's great. And it's Kathy and Rich. Anyone doesn't know us.
Right. Okay. And when you put that in, Josh can let us know what it is.
And we are a 501c3 nonprofit Friends of Jennings Hill.
Okay.
The other neighbors are very happy. I mean, I don't know if you all know that. They've gone by, they've talked to us personally, they've thanked us for, you know, putting the effort in the last few years, and there's so much more to do.
Mm-hmm.
And our heart is to work with all of you to help train others on those other 13, how to take care of them.
Mm-hmm. Yep, good.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else on? I don't think we have any public left. Janet, do you have anything for comments?
I've been working with explosives.
Not on the farm, but I am very interested in the cemeteries, always have, and I keep bringing it up, especially the Summer Street Cemetery. So I'd like to know how to go about trying to fix that up. And I think Steve mentioned in that cemetery, there is an African-American that served. He bought his freedom and he served in 2 wars. Or at least one. He's buried in that cemetery in one spot, and he has family members, but they don't have markers or they can't find them. But it's interesting history there, along with fixing that cemetery up that's right across from a college.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to know how to do about that.
I mentioned to the town manager in a Park and Recs meeting that possibly, I mean, our Park and Rec superintendent he's qualified to do 8 million things, but I don't think assessing cemeteries is one of his 8 million. So
Well,
I've asked the town manager to maybe have somebody from the town. And they probably can't assess stones and all that, but they can assess entryways. They can assess.
The wall has been.
I was going to say the walls and.
on the church, the parking lot there from the plows. And it's just over time. My son did his Eagle Star project there, and the money he had left over, he gave to the town so that they could remove the dead trees that were there, which they did use. And there's none of that left. They used it to take down a dead tree. But it would just be nice to somehow, I don't know how I'll go about doing it, getting it fixed up properly and try to put the stones back up. There's, I don't know what those are called. They always call them tombs, but I don't know what those above ground things are. But I noticed the other day that I think somebody took another top off of one. I don't remember it being quite exposed. So those need to be fixed. And it is considered the first cemetery. Not everybody that was buried there is now there. They're in Mount Prospect, but there's a history. And if they want to think about it, there's a university with people traveling all around. And this is supposed to be, this would be a good, not a sightseeing, but you know what I mean? And there's a history with some of the, a lot of the people that are buried there in particular. And I'm trying to remember his name, and I should remember Culver or something like that. Calvin, I think is his first name, the African-American that is buried there. So I'm particularly interested in that.
Yeah, and the earlier when I was mentioning in that there was Emily Fields and another BSU professor, their focus is the first cemetery. So they're applying for a grant, and like part of the grant would be potentially walking tours, potentially kind of like more focus on the cemetery. But I'll also reach out to other historical commissions to see how they've handled cemeteries as well.
Good, thank you, Steve. Janet, you mentioned the wall up against towards the church. Somebody, and the name escapes me, I believe he was from the church, had written to me a while back about repairing the wall. And I want to say it was decided that the town doesn't own that wall, that it's owned by the church on that side. I'll have to go back and look at the emails for it. But because the person was looking into, I believe, CPC money, and it turned out that.
Well, I think
I'll go back and check the emails on that.
Yeah, because the wall around it, it has over the years, I did see that the wall has changed. The border around it has changed a few times over the hundreds of years. But it's never been repaired from when the snowplow was plowed into it. And, it just needs to be fixed. And also it cracked over some headstones. So there's a lot of repair that needs to be done in there. And I just don't know how it'll go about doing it. That's what I'm interested in.
Right. My suggestion is and I was going to say keep on. I'll mention again to the town manager from the Park and Recs aspect of it to have an assessment done for like major things that need to be done. But you can always write to him too, or call him and offer your suggestions. One thing that just popped into my pea brain is possibly request a meeting with the town manager and have our friends at Jennings Hill there also, where they have concerns about the cemetery and you have concerns about the other cemetery. Maybe hit them all at once with it. Just a thought.
Just remember, it's also, it's called out, cemeteries and protection and restoration are called out in the current CPC plan for Bridgewater.
True.
Because
okay, good.
They had asked us when Mr. Dutton actually first sent it over to Parks and Recreation, he asked them if they would contact us and ask us to be on an advisory committee with them so we could help them in areas they don't know, since we had been training as well. So we tried many times to get in touch with them. That was probably before you, Gina. And
Well,
we didn't respond.
yeah, I don't think it was before me, because I think I've been on Parks and Rec, which used to be the Recreation Commission,
Mhm.
probably since before you were born.
Gina
No,
was-
seriously, I've been on since 1980.
Oh, my goodness.
So it wasn't before me. Actually, Carlton reminded me after the public hearing that we were talking about who the cemeteries fall under, and he looked it up and said it was Parks and Rec, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Right.
So I don't know who you try to contact from Parks and Rec.
It was a gentleman that the town offices gave us.
Charlie Simons, maybe?
That's name rings a bell, but I'm not gonna point any fingers. Just, you know, we did a lot of it by emails that we were given by Mr. Dutton's office and his assistant. And afterwards, we just decided, okay, let's just go for it and study. And I spend 40 hours a week studying.
I have another person that maybe you'll want to contact.
Okay.
Steve Sobel is the environmental planner in town.
What's his
And
name?
Steve Sobel, S-O-B-L-E-Y, I believe. He's in the planning department, and I think he's called the environmental planner. I know he works closely with Concom, but this seems to me to be a little bit related to landscape and that kind of thing. And he might be somebody that you could bring into the conversation. I have no guarantees. I'm just trying to give you another name.
Oh, that's awesome.
Sobel.
Solbo.
Thank you, Terry. I knew I had it wrong.
Yep, thanks, Carrie.
Thank you very much, all of you.
Okay, any other
Gina, I do have
comments?
to get off.
What was that, Carlton? I'm sorry.
I have to leave. I've got grandkids here and I need to give them a night hug.
Okay, we'll be off in 5 minutes, I promise, even less. Next meeting date is June 23rd, the fourth Wednesday in June. So that would be the next meeting. And after that, I'm sure that any discussion on that. Just a motion to adjourn and we're
Motion
done.
to
Less than
adjourn.
5 minutes. Okay, Harry motioned.
Second.
Steve
Steve,
seconded. Roll call, Josh?
Gina,
Yes.
Carlton,
Yes.
Jean,
Yes.
Harry,
Yes.
Joan,
Yes.
Steve.
yes.
Thank you. The motion was approved. The meeting's adjourned.
Okay, great. Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
everybody. Have a nice night.